In the world of Faerun, making a pact with an otherworldly being, some ancient Fey lord, or even an archfiend can result in you becoming a fusion of martial and magical capabilities called a warlock. In this video, I'll be going over another of the 12 classes ahead of the launch of BG3 come August 3rd. Today we'll be focusing on the Warlock. You can find the other classes linked in the playlist at the end of this video. I'll be pulling information from the 5th edition Player's Handbook, and I'll show off the early access character select screen or creation screen. There won't be a ton of visuals here because I don't want to spoil anything from the game for myself or for you. What you're watching right now is just a trailer that we've seen 2, 3, 4 years ago. But how we'll do this video is by talking about the base kit without any subclasses. Then I'll go into the subclasses that we know are coming at launch. It's worth noting that most subclasses go up to level 20 in D&D, but the cap for Baldur's Gate 3 is level 12. So we'll talk about the high-end abilities, kind of, but they won't really be seeing themselves into the game. So just this way you at least kind of know what the class kind of looks like down the road. Keep in mind, you can fully respec both your character and companion for the exception of their race. So I encourage you to try out every class you're curious about when the game launches. And please, as always, play how you want, not how the internet tells you to. Lastly, again, too, I am no D&D expert, not even slightly. So I apologize if I missed the mark on any of these descriptions. If you need help with any of the terms, I've made a quick terms guide for you in the upper right corner that goes over stuff like advantage, ability checks, and more. You can quickly navigate to any part of this video that interests you the most using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. Don't forget to swing on by my Twitch where I will be streaming Baldur's Gate 3 on launch, linked in the description and pinned comment. Let's get started here on my Warlock class and subclass detailed breakdown for Baldur's Gate 3. Loading into the game, we have the Warlock, and the Warlock is actually one of the newer classes added in, I think, like 2004 or so in D&D 3.5. And it's a pretty diverse class. I think when you take a look at it on paper, you kind of think to yourself, how am I any different than a warlock or, I'm sorry, a wizard or a sorcerer? What do I really do that's unique with a warlock? Oh, okay, I guess I get a weapon. That seems kind of funky. There's really a lot going on here. And the warlock is a class that can seem very complex, but once you really kind of wrap your brain around it, I think you're going to have a lot of fun if you want to play a class that is a caster that also can do some melee stuff if need be. So, you're a charisma-based class. That is how you're going to be doing a majority of your ability checks. That's how you're going to be casting your spells. That's how you're going to be manipulating your cantrips. And one of the things I want to go into here, and you can see the chart before you, is the kind of breakdown of what the Warlock is. When they start off, they just have their patron that they select, and that's the subclass, right? We have Great Old One and the Fiend in the early access. We'll be also getting the Archfey when the game launches. And then you get access to Eldritch Invocations and Pack Boons. Those two things are more of kind of what makes the Warlock the Warlock. But what I want to talk about really quick are the way the spells work for Warlock. So you'll see on that chart that was up a little bit ago that you have a number of spell slots, right? And you have a number of spells that you know. Those spell slots are not very high. We know that our max level is going to be level 12. So that's going to give us 3 spell slots with 11 spells known. That doesn't seem like a lot. You're like, ah, man, I'm not going to really be casting many spells. But the Warlock is different than the Sorcerer and the Wizard, and I want to talk about that because I think it's a big point that people might not understand. So when you look at a spell, let's press Customize. Let's take a look at a spell here. This says Level 1 Warlock Spell Slot. Your spell slots are not like the Wizard, where you've got different spell levels that go into different spell slots, and you can cast up and down in those spell slot levels and blah, 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 blah. I'll get to that when we talk about the Wizard. But what happens here is you are assumed to cast the highest level possible for your spells. And that's kind of a convoluted way to put this, but let me put this into perspective. At level 1, your slot level is level 100. I'm sorry, level 1. All of your spells, you can see it says level 1 enchantment spell, level 1 evocation, all that stuff. These are all cast at level 1. But at level 12, your slot level is level 5. Meaning that a Witch Bolt here that says level 1 or Hellish Rebuke that says level 1, it's cast as if it is level 5, meaning it scales in its damage capabilities, which is actually quite nice. Also, too, you add your charisma to your rolls. for your spell attack modifier, which is even nicer. So you can really do a lot of damage with your abilities as a Warlock. But another big thing too to remember between a Warlock and a Sorcerer and a Wizard is that in order to cast your spells again, you simply need to do a short rest. In D&D, there's ways you do short and long rests that are different than Baldur's Gate 3. You can do 2 short rests in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's as simple as just pressing a little button and boom, boom, you short rest. Here's some health back and spells come back online if you can do that. So, as a Warlock, you might not be able to cast 15 spells before you need to take a long rest or anything like that. But your spell slots recover quickly. So at level 12, if you've got 3 spell slots, you effectively have 6 spells. I guess it's actually kind of 9, right? If you can do 2 short rests, you've got 9 spells you can cast before you need to take a long rest. If that kind of helps put things into perspective. And another big thing for Warlocks is cantrips. So I haven't talked about cantrips much at all in any of these videos. It's just that they exist. But cantrips are assumed to be a level 0 spell. And Eldritch Blast is the most important one here because it scales with you as the Warlock. Your level will depend upon the number of beams that come out of the Eldritch Blast. And cantrips can be cast every single turn if you want to. They just simply cost an action point. So you'll simply just launch those things out. And I might have got that description a little off, and I apologize if I did. But the big thing here is that you can also scale any of these, well, Eldritch Blast in specific here, really, with other invocations. And that's the other part of the Warlock. So I'm going to put up a screen here that shows you the invocations for Warlock. These invocations are ways to kind of improve certain things or give you certain abilities. I think probably one of the most important invocations that most people will talk about when it comes to Warlock, if I go ahead and take a look over here at Eldritch Blast, is your Agonizing Blast. When you cast Eldritch Blast, add your Charisma modifier to the damage it deals on hit. That's a really good one, right? And you get that right there at level 2. Or take, for example, 2, Armor of Shadows. You can cast Mage Armor on yourself at will without expending a spell slot or material components. So these invocations are additional layers of complexity to the Warlock, but they're ways that you can also pull more abilities into yourself. Like, you get a Bane, 1 per spell, Warlock spell slot, or what's another one over here? You can cast Polymorph once using a Warlock spell slot. You can't do so again until you finish a long rest, but you can add these really cool kind of bits of spice, and you get more invocations as you level up. When you unlock invocations at level 2, you only know 2 invocations, but with Baldur's Gate 3, we know our max level is 12, so we're going to have a total of 6 invocations. So a lot of ways that you can really spice up, say, Eldritch Blast or other abilities, depending on your pact boons, too, are going to depend upon your individual access to these invocations. And that is the last thing I want to talk about that is a unique thing for the Warlock, is that the pact boon and the way that those work. We haven't even gotten into skills and proficiencies yet, but pact boons, basically, you choose one of 3 pact boons. The Pact of the Chain, the Pact of the Blade, or the Pact of the Tome. Pact of the Blade is basically you are going to make a pact with a blade, and you can summon that weapon. You are then considered proficient with that weapon. So even though you have simple, not supple, these supple weapons are falling from my hand. Simple weapon proficiency, you get proficiency with any weapon you decide to make a pact with. So this is a way to kind of branch out from that simple weapon proficiency that you would otherwise not have if you go with the other 2 pacts. The Pact of the Chain, which unfortunately I don't have any kind of cool things to show you on this location over here. Here's a close-up to the character. Pact of the Chain allows you to get you the Find Familiar spell. Now, this is a ritual, which is essentially cast just like a cantrip in that you can cast it, you don't have to worry about spell slots, anything like that. But it does take 10 minutes to cast the spell in tabletop. So unfortunately, I do not know how it works in Baldur's Gate 3. But I think it'll just kind of simply be something easy that you can use and take advantage of. But Pact of the Chain will give you the Find Familiar spell, which allows you to get Imp, Pseudo-Dragon, Quasit, or Sprite familiars that'll follow you around. And you can use your attack action to do basically when you take the attack action, you can forego one of your own attacks to allow your familiar to make one attack of its own with its reaction. Now that might change here because the Beastmaster did change the way that their stuff works in Baldur's Gate 3. I would assume it just kind of gives it its own little turn, just like we've seen with other summons in this game. So I would assume it might go that route. Now the last one I want to talk about is Pact of the Tome. And the way that works is basically you get a special tome where you get to choose 3 cantrips from any class's spell list. That's really awesome, right? And we've already discussed how cantrips really work in the game. So I think you get a lot of really cool, fun abilities here, right? You get these cool Warlock spell slots. You can take a look at that. This is what I was talking about, right? Used to cast Warlock spells, regain Warlock spell slots by taking a short rest. And those Warlock spells, of course, are right here, but they also, like I was saying too, they scale with you. I thought I was going to show that there, but I did not. But your saving throw proficiencies are both Wisdom and Charisma. You get light armor proficiency as well as simple weapon proficiency. We'll ignore this because that's part of our subclass discussion here. And really outside of that, there's not a ton that scales, right? Okay, I mean in the sense that, okay, at level 15 you get this. You do get Mystic Arcanum at level 11. At the 11th level, your patron bestows upon you a magical secret called an Arcanum. Choose one 6th level spell from the Warlock spell list as this Arcanum, and you can cast your Arcanum spell once without expending a spell slot. But you must finish a long rest before you can do so again. That's your kind of big thing that happens within the constraints of the levels of this game. Outside of that is Eldritch Master, which is some fun tomfoolery. Into our skills section, though, we do get, let me just kind of take all these off, Arcana, Deception, History, Intimidation, Investigation, Nature, and Legends coming from my background here. You've got those things to kind of take advantage of. Again, you're going to be focusing a lot on your charisma, but not necessarily. Don't forget your dexterity or constitution as well for doing any kind of concentration rolls or getting your armor class up for what have you, anything with your dexterity, helping out also with your initiative. So we've gone over all these things, right? The Eldritch Boons, the Invocations, how your cantrips really work, especially Eldritch Blast, and how all that kind of plays together. But a lot of it then gets flavored further with our subclasses. And 2 points I actually forgot to talk about I want to bring up very quickly. With your Invocations, when you get new ones, you swap them every time you level. It's the only time you can swap them or add new ones if you so wish, whatever your Invocation amount is. And it's the same thing with your Warlock spells. You'll swap them out with other ones that you know whenever you level. And it's the same thing, I think, for Sorcerer, but classes like Wizard, Cleric, Druid, I think Paladin can do it too. I don't remember if Rangers can. I actually think it's Wizard, Paladin, Druid, Ranger, and Cleric can all swap their spells out with a long rest. They just have different prepared spells. So it's kind of something I wanted to bring up just as a point of contention, or at least a point of difference between Warlocks, Sorcerers, and Wizards, because you're probably looking at all 3 when it comes to spellcasting, but I just want to give you that little bit of information first. The first one I want to talk about is the Fiend. Now, this will kind of color what spells you'll be getting as you progress through your journey as a Warlock. The Fiend spells are mainly, well, fire damage spells like Burning Hands, Command, Scorching Ray, Fireball, Fire Shield, Wall of Fire, Flame Strike, Hollow, stuff like that. You can see, I think we have Burning Hands right here, the Hellish Rebuke. These spells don't change depending upon your subclass in the early access build. I don't know if it changes in the full one, so just kind of keep that in mind. But your Fiend also gets access here to the subclass feature. It says Dark One's Blessing. So when you reduce a hostile creature to 0 hit points, this gift from your patron grants you 4 temporary hit points. Now that's actually different in the tabletop, and I don't know if it's going to scale. It's just showing me, it's just going to show me the amount that it's going to give me regardless, because in the tabletop it says you gain temporary hit points equal to your charisma modifier plus your Warlock level. So to put that into perspective here, we're level 3 at level, we have a 3 charisma modifier plus 1 for our level. That would be 4. So I don't know if this is just showing me 4 or that it's always 4. I hope it's not. I would assume it scales. So again, that would be your charisma modifier plus your level. But then you get stuff like Dark One's Own Luck, which allows you to add a D10 to saving throws, stuff like that, where you get to really kind of use your pact with the Fiend to kind of give you a little bit of like, I've made a pact with you, help me in these dire circumstances. And you get Fiendish Resilience, which is a really cool one at level 10, that basically allows you, after you do a short or a long rest, to grant resistance to a specific damage type. But that resistance damage type can be ignored when the damage is from a magical weapon or a silver weapon, which is kind of wild, right? You're dealing with a fiend here, of course, right? But it says you gain resistance to that damage type until you choose a different one with this feature, which is a pretty cool way to kind of say, hey, you know what? I know we're going into this dungeon and we're dealing with these specific monsters that are doing this specific type of damage a lot or using these spells in excess. I'm going to swap over to this type of damage resistance using my Fiendish Resilience. And then at level 14, something we probably won't see in the game is Hurl Through Hell, which basically sends you choose a creature and it sends it into another plane, into hell, which is just absolutely wild. So if you want to be doing a lot of fire damage and hindering yourself upon that fire damage, Fiend is definitely going to be the subclass for you, because you're focusing a lot on, of course, that fire damage, but also Dark One's Blessing and Dark One's Luck gives you the ability to get a lot of hit points from just simply killing through things, giving you some of that resilience that you're going to get, or the ability to give yourself an extra D10 when you're doing certain rolls. Now, if you're looking to make a pact with an eldritch fucking squid horror from outer space, then the Great Old One is going to be for you. Now, the spells for the Great Old One, and this is actually kind of similar for the Archfey, they're going to be geared a lot more towards control. And I made a mistake in talking about the spells during the Fiend section, but these are the ones that you would get: Dissonant Whispers and Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Those are two examples of spells that you would get only from the Great Old One. And you'll get more spells from each actual subclass, of course, right? But you have your own set Warlock spell list. For the Fiend, those special ones would be Burning Hands and Command. It, for some reason, chose these two, which everyone gets. So that kind of confused me a little bit ago. Sorry about that. So Dissonant Whispers here and Tasha's Hideous Laughter. But of course, outside of that, you get Detect Thoughts, Phantasmal Force, Clairvoyance, Sending, Dominate Beast, Dominate Person, Telekinesis, stuff like that. And this is definitely more of a psychic-based subclass. So you get Mortal Reminder is your subclass feature here. When you land a critical hit against a creature, that creature and any nearby enemies are frightened until the end of their next turn. That is spicy, right? Again, you're going to be playing a lot with people's minds and trying to either fear them, control them, whatever it is. At level 1, you'll get Awakened Mind, which basically allows you to telepathically speak to any creature around you. Well, within 30 feet of you, I guess. But you don't need to like share languages or anything, so it basically allows you to kind of tap into them. So this might be something that comes up conversationally. It's not something that would necessarily come up in any kind of combat situation. But I don't know if Mortal Reminder here has replaced Awakened Mind. So it might have actually completely replaced it, so this to actually give them some sort of actual combat ability, like, say, the Fiend or the Archfey. Then you get, at level 6, you get Entropic Ward, which basically allows you to ward yourself against an attack. So when someone decides to attack you, and you're the Great Old One subclass with Entropic Ward, you can use your reaction to give them disadvantage, and then when you attack them, you get advantage. So it's a pretty cool way to kind of say, hey, I'm about to get hit pretty hard. Let me get a little disadvantage on that, and let me try to get this thing out of the fight with advantage. The caveat to that is that your next attack roll against the creature has advantage if you make it before the end of your next turn. So you have a good amount of time to do that, but it's only for that set period of time, of course. Then outside of that, you'll get Thought Shield at level 10, which basically gives you a resistance to psychic damage and allows it so people cannot read your mind through telepathy. And I don't know if that's going to be something that will come into the game in any way, shape, or form. It might give us some sort of like resistance towards charm in the actual game versus tabletop, of course. Level 14, you get a cool ability called Create Thrall, where you can basically like, it says infect a humanoid's mind with the alien magic of your patron, which sounds so cool. But you can only do it on incapacitated humanoids, and it is level 14, so it probably won't be seeing itself in Baldur's Gate 3. That is one, though, I would love to just kind of see put into level 12, because that could be so fun to play around with and manipulate as we play the Great Old One subclass for the Warlock. And the last subclass is the Archfey, which unfortunately is not in the early access game. but we're going to have the Great Old One up here because it has a similar subclass feature. So the spell list that we're going to be getting with the Archfey would be Fairy Fire, Sleep, Calm Emotions, Phantasmal Force again, Blink, Plant Growth, Dominate Beast, Dominate Person. So a lot of the same abilities that we got with the Great Old One, right? But still stuff that is very control oriented with a little bit of Fey kind of smattering therein. And the big thing here is movement. That's what you kind of get with the Archfey that you don't get with the Great Old One. And we'll talk about that too when we talk about Beguiling Defense. Nope, it's Misty Escape, Misty Escape. And we know that Fey Presence, Misty Escape, and Beguiling Defense are all three in the game from Fextra Life's video on it. But the way Fey Presence works, and you get that at level 1, you see here from Mortal Reminder from the Great Old One, this says when you land a crit hit against a creature, that creature and nearby enemies are frightened until the end of their next turn. With Fey Presence, as an action, you can cause each creature in a 10-foot cube originating from you to basically make a wisdom saving throw. And if they fail it, they are either frightened or charmed. So there is saving throws involved in that. There's, of course, frightening or charmed, depending upon whichever you choose. And that's what the real difference between Mortal Reminder and the Fey Presence is for the Archfey. Then outside of that, we get Misty Escape at level 6, which is pretty sick. So anytime you take damage, you can use your reaction to turn invisible and teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space that you can use. That you can see, sorry. Keep in mind, though, that this feature can only happen once before every long or short rest. So basically, you use it and you've used it until you rest again. Then you can use it again. So it's a really cool get out of jail free card, but it is one that is has basically a charge attached to it. Only one charge per rest. Then you get Beguiling Defense, where basically you are immune to being charmed, and when someone tries to charm you, you can just charm them back, which is pretty sick. And then Dark Delirium is something that happens in level 14. It's very similar to what the Fiend gets when you kind of send someone to hell, but this time you put them into like an illusory realm that only you and them are like a part of. They're just kind of lost in their own mind, and they're just sitting there on the battlefield. So they stay in that realm until they get hit, or if they fail their check or whatever it is. But that's level 14. We probably won't see that in the game. Just wanted to talk about it nonetheless. So those are our 3 subclasses for the Warlock, and I think the Warlock has a ton of complexity attached to it. Do you want to play a character that's really kind of focusing more on the fire damage aspect, doing outright damage, and kind of playing a little bit more maybe in melee? Then go Pact of Boon, or I'm sorry, Pact of Blade, because unfortunately we don't have Hexblade, but go Pact of Blade, and then go with your Fiend, right? Or maybe you want to do a lot of crowd control, and you really want to manipulate people. Then maybe go Archfey, and maybe you want to summon something in addition to that, like a familiar. Then you want to go with your Pact of the Chain. Or perhaps, too, you want to go again with manipulating things, but you want to stick to more of a spellcasting route. Then maybe you go with something like Pact of the Tome, which gives you those cantrips, and you go with the Great Old One. There are a lot of different ways to approach the Warlock, and I think it is a class that maybe people don't really 100% understand, but across the invocations, the packs, the subclasses, how your spell slots work, it is a very fun and diverse class. If you have any questions, anything like that, please by all means go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Our next class is going to be the Sorcerer. You'll find that coming out here in the next day here. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.